What are the best ways to evaluate a tool? What are the pros and cons of the existing tools? And how do we make the decision to when it's time to switch? How will we know? And I know that that's like 3 different questions, but why don't we start with, first of all, maybe Kano, Melanie, and Mary Beth, we'll just kind of go in order between the 4 of us. What tools you have experience with, and what are the pros and cons of those tools? So Kano, I'm going to get it right, I swear. Would you like to start?
It's thinking like Genghis Khan, Kano.
Kano, I like it. I can do that.
All right.
Go for it, Kano.
Yeah, so tools, I mean, I've been in several different organizations that use different tools, sometimes proprietary ones, a lot of off-the-market ones. Often at some of the smaller companies, we bootstrapped and either created our own or use some of the free tools. I have to say this is one of the areas that I least like about the whole evaluation process and choosing which one's best, because it's a different hammer, and you can get hammer that nail in a lot of different ways, and it's really easy to get caught up sometimes on some of the nuances between one tool or the other. With that being said, I think there's a lot of things that are changing for sites, such as ours is much more dynamic. So a lot of the testing tools traditionally have relied on kind of page load to apply any of the types of tests we're doing online, and that is something that doesn't happen as fluidly. So some of it depends on your environment, if you've got an app and things like that. But honestly, I'm a bit tool agnostic. We're currently between tools, or at least our main tool, and so yeah, maybe moving along to Mary Beth or Catherine on what they're using might be a little bit more informative.
Well, I do want to say, you said something really important, which is that people often hyper-focus on the tool when in fact, pretty much all the tools have similar capabilities, pros and cons that they share, and they may outweigh each other. But at the end of the day, it's less about the technology and more about the people and the experience that are supporting it. So, and the strategy, of course. So good points. Melanie?
Sure. So let me start off by saying right now, my team is primarily using Maximizer as our tool. American Express also has Adobe Target in our toolbox, and we are looking to leverage Target a little bit more. So I'm actually in the process of putting together a proof of concept. So it's a timely topic for me. I can tell you the reality of what happens is that those of us who are a baseline Adobe shop, if you're using Omniture, for your analytics, Adobe pushes hard to get all of their tools in the door. And so, they will tell you that all of the issues that you're having would be solved if you were just 100% Adobe, because none of those other tools can integrate with their tool as well as their other tools. So we're going to try to prove that out. We're putting together a proof of concept right now. Our environment is complex, particularly at the moment, because we are, and I'm sure this is true in a lot of large organizations, big websites, companies that have been around a long time, we have disparate code bases. So, we're facing some challenges. So the things I would say that I'm focusing on in this proof of concept is, number one, not just narrowing in on the 2 tools that we have available to us right now, but looking more broadly at what the right tools would be for us. And to do that, I'm focusing on client side versus server side. Are they one or the other, or can they do both? How well do they work, or do they have experience at working in environments that are on a React code base? How well do they integrate with our back-end data tools? So there's going to be some AA testing that we do to measure how data is being captured by these tools downstream. And what kind of support we can get. I mean,
that's important.
Is it better to have an in-house tool, or is it better to have a tool that's supported by professional services? If it is a tool supported by professional services, how good are they? How quickly do they respond?
That's something Adobe is known for. Their really fast response rate and excellent customer service.
Yeah, that's what they're known for. All right. I had this conversation. I had this conversation with someone. Oh, it was with Dylan. That I was involved in multiple root cause analyses at our testing program at Dell, where we had to try to monetize the damage to not, for things not getting.
Oh, that's awesome.
Quickly enough. I'm sure you remember some of those, Kelly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but that being said, Adobe tools have come a long way. They've done a lot to improve their tools, but now, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? Let's see. We're gonna do a proof of concept and measure how well they perform against our other options.
Excellent.
Hey, Melanie, this is Lee. I wanted to ask a quick question. I know you had mentioned something about it being a large company having different code base. It's your proof of concept only going to concentrate on like one particular stack?
No.
Code? Are you guys going to try to do across? Because with third party, and we run into this at Intuit too. I'm sure Dylan's mentioned that before about the challenge of integrating third party, have like unknown JavaScript or unknown CSS that could throw off your
all the things that happen on the client side. Yeah, I mean, we are definitely looking for a tool that works in both scenarios. I mean, we are open to the possibility that we may have some combined some combination of tools, just depending on what the outcome of these proofs of concept are. We are also, I mean, we had Dylan come talk to us this week about Wasabi, about your in-house tool. We want to look at that option as well. What's available to us, open source, that we could bring in-house and own and manage ourselves. But yeah, we are definitely looking for a tool that can work across code bases. That would be the optimal solution. I'll let you know what we find out, Lee.
That's actually a good question. Before I switch to Mary Beth, Lee, okay, so everybody else that's here, whether you're on the panel or a guest, is everybody familiar with Wasabi?
I'm not. I have not heard of that.
That's a new thing? Okay, so that is something that Intuit has created in-house because of their very struggles, the struggles that led to the question that I got emailed with trying to find the right test tool. And they'd gone through several different tools, and no one thing fit the needs of Intuit. So they created their own. And then they open sourced it, and that's what Wasabi is. So if you guys would be interested, I think it might be a good idea to have Lee and or Dylan give an introduction, because it's pretty interesting. It's definitely got a lot of flexibility.
Dylan mentioned another open source testing tool to me as well. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, that we're going to check into as well. So after the meeting, I'll be happy to send links to to Wasabi on GitHub, as well as the name of the other open source tool.
Excellent.
Yeah, and if you guys are interested, I can also set up time with our Wasabi product manager and dev manager and kind of explain a little more how their open source works as well.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, Mary Beth, what tools have you got the chance to work with?
So I've been in the agency world for quite some time, and I have worked among most of the larger enterprise level tools, with a handful of proprietary tools at specific clients. So what I would say is that in tool evaluation, that it's entirely subjective. Of course, you want to consider some of the Forrester research and the industry-wide research, but really what it comes down to is what's good for your organization. So for example, if you have a budgetary constraint, well then going with Adobe Target and all the bells and whistles, it just may not be functional. And not to say that the enterprise level tools are not worth the investment. To Melanie's point, sometimes one-stop shopping is worth the investment of time and resources. However, if you have additional constraints or people resource constraints, you want to make sure that your testing tool is going to be available to your wider organization, that you're not going to just have, say, one person who may wear 6 other hats be responsible for test creation, ideation, analysis. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And I think we'll get into some of those other topics later in this discussion. But when choosing the tool, you should really be considering the greater optimization program, or what your end result is going to be, rather than just say, hey, we're going to be testing for the sake of testing. We need the biggest and the best, most expensive tool. That's not the case. You can yield profound results sometimes with a free version. You know, if you think about the test setup correctly, have the right resources internally, you know, it's not about the price tag necessarily.
This is true. This is true. Before I offer up a second question for us to talk about, does anybody have a question of the panel? I'll take that as a no. Try to give you guys a good minute to respond every time I ask a question, because I know it takes a while to find how to take yourself off mute. So the next topic that we had, still related to the technology or tools, was about workflow management. And I think of these mostly as like the process. How do you get an idea from ideation through the various consideration cycles, development, design, whatever, legal possibly, and then launch, and how does the information, what system are you using to get that, all the information input, and then moving it along the process, and are you measuring the efficiency and efficacy of that workflow tool? So again, let's just start by talking about our experiences, and if you have like a favorite thing, a favorite tool that you use, we'd love to hear about it. And we'll start again with Mel.
So yeah, we don't have a workflow tool. I know. We're using a roadmap to basically as our workflow tool. So you know, it's a fairly robust dynamic document that that we all maintain with the primary, you know, strategy and test management areas that you folks use it primarily. But yeah, I would love to have a workflow system. We've talked about it, but we're not there yet.
I hear you. You have experience with another one, I happen to know, if you want to share that.
I do. I mean, we at Dell we use SharePoint to create a quasi workflow tool. I think it worked pretty well. In fact, if I could replicate that today, I would, because it did. I mean, we are manually measuring, you know, by capturing dates. We are manually measuring our capacity and velocity. The tool that we utilized at Dell just through SharePoint gave us those metrics without any intervention.
Yep.
It was actually pretty good. And I know,
isn't it funny?
I know. While I was at Dell, I did a tool assessment for workflow tools to look for a replacement for that. We ended up not having the budget to move forward with it, but I did look at some pretty cool tools from Jira and from PlanView. And we do have Jira in-house at Amex. We haven't looked at using it as a real workflow tool, so that it's possible that, you know, that we have something we could rig to be a workflow tool. Max,
yep.
we need to talk about that.
I think Max is on, but I don't know that he's figured out how to go off mute. So, Kano.
Yeah, I mean, we're fairly similar to Melanie's scenario. We don't have anything formalized. We use some of the freemium tools, mainly Trello. We've got an integration with Slack, so that when people start having sort of an idea, we can flesh it out in Slack and then forward it onto a card then goes
Nice.
through our process. But you know, it's pretty loose. It's intended to be as open as possible because we try to democratize our testing. It's sort of to one of the earlier points, so that different teams or different individuals can champion something that is a little more relevant to what they do or to the region they work in. And so we try to find some sort of tool that is easily available to multiple people, multiple languages, and multiple locations. So sure, we could formalize it or make it a little bit more efficient, but we spend a lot less time on the process itself or the workflow system than we do on, you know, getting the ideas and getting them implemented and afterwards trying to get them into development. So those are that's probably where we spend more of our time rather than the workflow.
Sure. Mary Beth, what experience do you have with workflow tools?
So what I would say is that it is most important to start with the roadmap, and if nothing else, rely on a roadmap, because at that level, at least you have the granularity of the individual test details. And then it depends really on what your optimization program looks like. So if you have a handful of tests in a single brand, then that roadmap may be sufficient. But I've worked on larger pharmaceutical companies with multiple brands among multiple countries in numerous time zones, and having all of those tests running simultaneously with different developers or brand managers overseeing, it is best to have a workflow tool. So in that case, I've used probably the majority of those tools, but Jira, Maven Link, all of the Altessian, I don't know how you pronounce that one, but they have a bunch of tools. So I do strongly recommend, if you have a large-scale optimization program, that is best to go ahead and use that in conjunction with your roadmap.
Yep. Let's pivot that into the learning library, and it largely, to me, they feel connected, because a lot of the information that is required for the intake of ideas to get something designed or developed is also the information that you want available to you when you go back and you try to tie the test idea, the hypotheses, the area of the sites, the segments you focus, the KPIs, whatever, and you want to tie that back to eventual insights and performance that you can take forward and use for iteration and that sort of thing. They are not always tied together. Physically speaking, they are not always tied together. And I might even go so far as to say I've only actually seen them tied together one time. And it's the experience Melanie and I both had at Dell. So I guess my question and we'll skip Mel because I know her story, but for everybody else, are you guys doing anything now? And I guess, do you think it would be helpful, if you're not, to have a learning library? And if you have one, what's it like? If you don't have one, what would you like to have? And we'll start with you, Connell.
I guess so, but I didn't want to jump in too early. What we've done so far is really just with our Trello board. The last step before we take a card, and if you're familiar with the Trello setup, it's you move a card from one list to another and going basically left to right as the workflow progresses. So the last step basically is, has this been put into some sort of place where other team members can go look up information about this test? That's been one of the biggest challenges, is finding something, especially because we're going from sort of a North American focus with our experimentation tools to more global. We're trying to open it up to people that are based in Japan and Singapore and Europe, and so trying to share with them some of the things we've already tested it's useful, but it's scattered everywhere, as well as with personnel changes and things like that. So it's a bit of a struggle to figure something out, and honestly, we're using basically glorified Google Documents, easy way to share things, but not as conducive for quickly getting that test information into some sort of
everything that looked at, the checkout process into a single location and being able to sort and filter and segment. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's the testing we're talking about is dispersed across not just on-site testing, but it could be things like the social media manager tried 2 different headlines, but that could be relevant to somebody who's email testing at the subject line. And so making it available so each of those people can look up, what's been done and try to get some learnings from there has been a bit of a challenge.
So to-do list, we're going to put it all together.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
I'm looking to learn what other people are doing so I can steal their ideas.
There you go. There you go. Mary Beth, do you have experiences with any clients that have learning libraries?
Not that really exist. I've seen the need and I've observed the need among many clients. One client will use the roadmap, which to Kana's point was somewhat functional in a living document, a Google Sheet, where all tests live, not live, completed, any issues with the tests are documented in a separate tab, but it still requires somebody to kind of go fishing for that information. It's not easily available to sort. So the need exists, and I know here at Search Discovery we are acutely aware, and we're on our toes developing some potential solution, but TBD on that one.
All right, your turn, Mel.
Yeah, I mean, so we had a system at Dell that was tied to our workflow tool, and that seemed to work pretty well. I won't say it wasn't 100%, but
No.
it was again, in hindsight, it was great.
It's funny how everything looks better in hindsight.
Exactly.
Can you describe for the group, since they are not as familiar with it as we are, but can you describe for them the benefits of it and how it was utilized for ideation and for, that kind of stuff, how you could sort and filter and all that stuff?
Exactly. I mean, from my memory, Kelly, and you can.
It's been 5 years.
Yeah. I know where I've missed a few things. Basically, it was almost like a keyword or index word search that would return any test that was associated with those keywords. And of course, within the system that we had built, we had fields created for winner, loser, key outcomes, revenue impact, up or down, or customer experience impact. So you could really quickly, you still had to go into those tests a little bit. I think, Kelly, remind me, could we do? I seem to remember being able to create basically a dump, like an Excel spreadsheet dump that would link back to the back to the testing. I mean, you still had to do a little bit of looking at what exactly was tested previously.
Yeah,
but
and it required the analyst to pull out of your results document the relevant information, the what, the so what, and the now what,
right,
and put it in a way that made it easy to find. So there was that. Yeah.
And now, I mean, and we were running 100 to 150 tests annually at Dell. Which sounds like a small number if you're comparing it to Amazon or Google, but a pretty big number if you're comparing it to Amex. So it was really critical to be able to do that, and a lot of different folks involved, that would want to be able to find those insights. So it was really critical. We do not have a system at Amex. I mean, really at all. It's on our radar. But we really haven't tackled it yet.
All right. Over here in the chat, I'm hearing about FreeCamp. Has anybody tried that?
No, I am not familiar, but I will investigate after this call.
I know. I'm kind of excited. You want to share about it, David?
Yeah, so we were just trying to find something that didn't require a lot of kind of overhead from whatever company we were going to go with. We didn't want to have to set up free trials. We didn't want to have to set up user accounts and all this stuff. The one thing we really like about this one is as soon anybody who wants to be part of it can make their own account and handle it however they want to handle it. Then you get added to the group, and then now you can see the group stuff. So we're not limited by user licensing. We actually I think we can upload as many files and stuff as we want to. It's got a timekeeping piece, little add-on you can do for timekeeping. It's like I said, it's not a silver bullet by any means. I still don't feel like it's exactly what we're looking for, but without getting into huge, I don't know, like requests for proposals and all kinds of stuff. It has so far satisfied our needs to at least get something documented. So if we haven't released it to our entire team where people can submit ideas yet, but it's not that it's not capable, we just haven't set it up that way. And we just mainly use it between our internal team to make sure that we know what projects are going on, what steps. There is like a little Trello board style thing inside of that, so you can set all that stuff up and assign it to different people, assign dates, include in little tidbits of information. They're called tasks. And I mean, yeah, it's been, like I said, it's been great. We just reassign it once it's live and reassign it once it's passed. Any learnings and reportings, we go ahead and add it as a file to that project.
Mm-hmm.
So you just go back to that project and say, what happened with that project? And here you go. Here's all the learnings. Here's all the assets that we had. Codes, if we have to do code base changes with it. I mean, it's all kind of housed in one spot.
So let me ask this, because as Mary Beth mentioned, it is something that we have been noticing with growing frequency, a lack of having a learning library system of any kind. At the same time, we have noticed a desire for. Is the reason that so many of you guys, don't have a formal learning library because it's hard to do or hard to find, or there isn't a good one? Or is it just not as high priority?
I don't think there's a tool out there that's really dedicated towards our industry and our kind of like I'm finding a lot of project management tools. I'm finding a lot of product management tools, but I'm not really finding the one that I did hear about last year at this summit that I went to called a Conversion Conference. Was a woman, I don't remember her name now because she literally sold the company 12 hours before she presented. It's now wrapped up underneath Optimizely. So her program was bought out by Optimizely. Now it's part of their suite of tools. And since we're not an Optimizely customer, I can't exactly see what that is. But
Right.
Everything that she described was everything that we were looking for. And I even went up to her after the conference and said, "We've got money. We'll give you money. Let us know how we can do it." And unfortunately, she got her money by selling it to Optimizely.
I think I've seen that. Do you remember the name of it?
I'm gonna have to go back and look.
Somebody showed it to me the other day. It seemed, and it's one of the things that it touts, I guess, is that it uses the outcomes of your prior tests to make recommendations for future recipes. It's kind of an automated system like that.
There was quite a bit of things that were automated, and
Yeah.
It was set up in a way that it sounded less project management and more optimization kind of centric. So I was, of all that conference I got out of that was the one thing I was hoping to really take home, and I couldn't.
Yeah. All right. So that's something to look in and look forward. All right, we are just past the half hour, so let's move away from tools. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, Kelly, I think the one thing that I've seen, that's the only place I've seen that's done well for either workflow and having a learning library has really been, the tool wasn't very good. It was a wiki. I used to be at Amazon, and everyone would save everything they do on a wiki, and people would add to it, and it was always there in perpetuity for people to look at and to check with like what have people done in the past. But it was more of a cultural thing than anything else.
Yeah,
and I think that's
what
one
they
of the
use at
struggles
Nike
that we
as
work
well.
with here. Yeah, just getting people to not only to move on a experiment, but then go back and document it. And I think so often now everyone just finishes the test, puts in the bug or the request for the change, and then moves on to the next project, the next test.
Yep.
So I think there's a lot of cultural changes that really need to follow, not necessarily the right tool if you don't have the right culture.
I agree with that one, Kano. I think it is a culture because we still have to work into it to make sure the product manager is collaborating with their analysts at the end of the test to document, like if there's a test winner, if there's not, what the learning, did our tests meet the learning plan that we started with ideation on. So there isn't like, I mean, it's part of our testing life cycle process that we have in our playbook, but it still requires kind of like a little nudging for them to complete that last process.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to tips. And what we're going to do this time is we're going to take turns. We're going to just do sort of rapid fire, but I'll start just single tip, and then we'll go in order. So Kelly, Mel, Kano, Mary Beth, Kelly, Mel. We'll just keep going until, and other folks, if you have them, raise your hand, meaning speak up or type it in. That's it. You found it. Experiment Engine. Thanks, David. So I'll get started. My favorite tip that I've learned since I started testing is to always start with what decision are you going to make based on this test? What action are you going to take? What decision you're going to make? And what results would you need to see in order to make that decision? So that's my big tip. If you don't start with that, then you can potentially set yourself up for failure, because you'll have the results, you get stuck in analysis paralysis, and nothing happens at the end of the day because nobody had agreed about what the test meant. So, Mel?
I guess my big tip, although I don't know if it works in every org, is to make friends with the design team.
I shouldn't have taken a drink before you started. Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of design. I advocate for them. I try to help make them look good, and then we have a good symbiotic relationship. So when I need help, designing a test, I get it. And when they need help promoting an idea that they're not getting buy-in from, I'm there to support. So I guess that's not so much a tool or process tip, but more just a strategic tip.
It's good. It's a good one. All right, Kano.
Probably the best one is that, we're not curing cancer here. I mean, unless someone on the call is, then you got to think about it differently. But
that is true,
having
actually.
a 99% confidence or 95% confidence is possibly overkill. The perfect test design shouldn't be the enemy of a good test design. So just moving quickly and trying to be efficient rather than being perfect.
Awesome. Mary Beth, what's your biggest tip?
So my biggest tip is to always have a benchmark. So even if you have new content and you say, well, we're going to make this test, we don't have any data. Well, let's average a few weeks data, or let's compare this to the pre-design. So always have some sort of benchmark, even if it's a soft benchmark, because there's nothing worse than coming with statistically significant results, but we don't really know what the win was. We know this was a better win, but why? Or how much percentage? What was our benchmark? What are we comparing it against? So always have something hard evidence for comparison, even if it's a very soft benchmark.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Second tip. Similar to the first, but it is the juice worth the squeeze. And that is, how many of you remember the book that came out and everybody talked about it for a while, and it was Test Everything, or Always Be Testing? ABT was another one that came out about the same time. And the idea was, don't put anything out on your site until you test it. Totally disagree with that now. Back then I was like, yeah, test everything. And now I'm like, no, not everything is testing. Some things should be user testing. Some things should just be fixed. Some things require an analysis. And if you throw everything through testing, you slow testing down for the things it's really needed for. So my second tip, not everything has to be tested. Mel?
Yep, totally agree with that. And to piggyback on it, everything needs to be prioritized. And there needs to be an objective prioritization matrix that allows you to determine which tests pass the test of a value to make it into your sprint and use up your valuable resources. Not that we do that perfectly, but we try.
Excellent. Kind of.
I'll hinge off that too. Even before something gets prioritized, we make sure that somebody who's going to champion it all the way through implementation, if that wins in a test, that person has to be in buy-in from the get-go. We've done plenty of times where we tested something and then it wasn't a priority for the project manager or whoever owned that area. So it doesn't even get through to the A/B test portion or prioritization until we've got that stakeholder on board.
Buy-in's huge. Mary Beth.
I would say my second priority would be understanding how much of a traffic sample that you need. Nothing is more important than making sure that you have enough traffic to make that test valid. We don't want to go to some obscure part of the website and then launch our test and then realize, oh, we need another 19 weeks to understand what the winner is going to be. So
everybody just hold up.
Yeah, understanding how much traffic you need, and then also where that traffic's coming from, right? So if it is a portion that usually gets high amount of traffic, well, does that traffic come from paid search? Is there a campaign that's fueling that traffic? Just understanding that what type of level that you'll have for that test duration.
Excellent. All right. Third tip from me. Let's talk about cross-functional team collaboration, just because it's one of these things on here. And in my experience, it's very similar to what Mel said about make friends with the design team. I guess I would just take it up another level or add to it or expand on it, because I think it's really important that everybody who might be touched by the testing program is fully engaged with that program. They know what's happening, and they're sharing with you what's on their roadmaps. So the worst, thing that can happen is you're doing a test on should there be a banner or not, and your test is running at the same time that the marketing team is planning to put this big sale out, and they want to use that banner space, and now you've messed up their sale, and they're bringing in different traffic than the traffic you're testing on, and there's a big collision. So collaboration between the cross-functional teams, be aware of their calendars and make sure that they're aware of yours. That's number 3. Mel?
Oh, this is getting hard because you guys are getting all the good ones. Let's see. Test setup. Let's revisit that for just a second. I think, one of the first things that you said was, or your first tip was to know what business question, what problem you're trying to solve. So just to take that a little bit further, agreeing the KPIs cross-functionally with everybody who's involved, I think seems like overkill, and probably not necessary in all orgs. It is in ours, because
it's in all the ones I've seen too.
Yeah, if we do not do that, once the test ends and we do our analysis, we spend another 2 weeks, 3 weeks answering the follow-on questions that everybody has. So I heard actually, listening to an old podcast the other day, that the K in KPI doesn't stand for 1,000. So that I think I'm going to adopt that into my testing vernacular when I'm working with folks. But that is not boiling the ocean with a single test, and not trying to answer every business question, honing in on just what's important and what the KPI is that's going to answer that is kind of critical at the beginning.
Excellent. I love it. Kano.
Well, Melanie sort of took mine, but I'm gonna hinge off of what she just said, because I think for each test you do definitely need to have a key metric that you're looking at, and that is going to be the absolute end-all be-all of determining the success of that experiment. We've had often times where you start looking in and tearing apart that test on every metric possible, and you basically get into p-hacking and finding some relevance that's not really an important or a real true finding. Although you can afterwards determine maybe some secondary tests to try if you do if you go tear it apart and look at all the different metrics. But you have to have 100% agreement across the board that we're going to look at this one KPI and that's it.
Awesome. All right. One more round, then we'll move to tricks. So I had one, and then you made me think of something. Hold, please. talk amongst yourselves.
Well, I would say that the overarching theme
I
is
love
to
it. She's
share.
like, okay,
I would say share your results.
share your
So,
results. That's good.
at the end of the day, even if it's your exactly opposite of what your hypothesis was, that
Mm-hmm.
information may still be valid to someone else. So I feel that when the tests don't go as planned, that people are kind of, want to hang their head and, oh, maybe we'll just send an email out instead of doing a formal presentation, here are the results. But that's not the case. Harness any results, share, disseminate your information, and every test is a learning. Make
That's
sure that.
excellent. Excellent. Which reminded me of mine. Thank you so much, Mary Beth. So last round, final tip from me anyway is iterate. It's so important. Use what you learn from testing and analytics to grow. Your testing program should be heuristic. Every test, at the end of the test, you should say, the what, so what, and now what. And, the what are the results, the so what is, what were the insights, and the now what are what actions are you going to take. But I would add to that, and what are you going to test next based on what you learned this time. So that's me. Melanie?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of tack onto that a little bit, one of the things I had to overcome when I first joined Amex was a reluctance to share data. The team wanted to share results only in percentages and not give the real numbers.
It was a 200% lift. 10 versus 5.
It was less, yeah, there's that. It was less that, though, than a concern that the downstream stakeholders would take the numbers and
run with them.
Use them as they saw fit, to pick and choose the data that supported their argument. So
sure.
One of, I think that's completely wrong. You've got to be transparent with the results, all of the results.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure that that your partners and stakeholders know what to do with the numbers. So no learnings deck is complete, like you said, without the what next information.
Mm-hmm.
I think is, and also put it in a PDF.
So they can't edit it. That's a really good tip. Actually, I think that falls into the trick category. So we'll let that be your first trick. PDF it. I love it.
PDF before you send it out.
Kano.
I've definitely done the PDF trick. I love that. That's great. I'm not a big fan of forms or formalized documentation. However, we found that here and in my past lives, it really helps to have a experiment sort of documentation on this is what we're testing, this is what our hypothesis is, and just have it a little bit more formalized, but still easy to fill out. That includes that core KPI and secondary things we're going to be looking at, ideas for iterations, and have all that documented up front. Makes it easier downstream, but also gets through some of those other issues of will the test actually make that decision for us, and will we be able to implement this once it's done? And it sort of helps knock out some of those, some of the other tips that we were talking about beforehand, if there's something formalized that everyone's filling out.
Yep. Mary Beth, your final tip.
My final tip is don't be afraid of testing. So I'm not advocating testing for the sake of testing, but we don't need to have the most profound multivariate analysis to get really strong results. And that's one of the things that I think we need to step back and say, well, maybe it's just shortening a form, and it's a very low level technical part to do, and we may increase conversion by 50%. So we don't need to have 5-6 elements in a multivariate test and think about it for a month before we launch. Sometimes you need to just go with your roadmap once that's assessed, and if it's a low level of impact, it may still be a high priority result.
Excellent. All right, so we are at the 10 minutes left mark. We're going to spend 5 minutes, which gives everybody 1 or 2 tricks. And then I want to tell you guys about what's coming next, okay? So my tricks. Let's see, shorter process, shorter results analysis. a lot of this we covered with our tips. I think my biggest trick is, and I don't even know if we want to call it a trick, but we're going to do it anyway. We're going to call it a trick: gamification. So using gamification to get the entire, it's all about, goes back to what Kano said about culture. If you can get your organization involved in your testing program and interested in optimization of the entire customer experience, and you can get them leaning forward and wanting to see what's going to happen, did the recipe that I thought was going to win, then you get that buy-in and you get that support and you get the budget needed to help improve for everybody. So gamification can be anything from something similar to, the old Which Test One type format to I've seen folks that actually do dollar bets on recipes and they pin them to cork boards and then whoever wins gets them, or poker chips, whatever, bragging rights, whatever. It doesn't really matter, but gamification is a big one. And then because we're almost out of time, my second one is bring food. People will come. All right. Who's second? Melanie.
I don't know if this is a tip or a trick, but get really closely aligned with your product owners so that they feel like you're an advocate for their product. Of course, I'm an advocate for everyone's product. They really don't need to think about that. But as long as they feel like you're a partner and in it with them, it goes a long way towards allowing you to shape things in a way that's allows you to do strategic testing.
For those of you who don't know, Melanie is a master at making two people that are disagreeing with each other at the same time, and she enters the room and they both think she's on their side. So she knows what she's talking about. That is the trickster. Kano.
I don't know if it relates directly to experimentation and testing, but one thing that we're really trying to do is just get everybody more fluent in the language of data and analytics. And I think that helps with the conversation of when you're testing, you're not just trying to improve something squishy like engagement or improve the page.
Engagement
you actually
matters.
Everyone knows what you can measure.
Yeah.
But now you know how you can measure things and what's what you've got in your analytics implementation, and I think
Absolutely.
it brings everybody to the same page.
Right, and you teach them that if you're going to measure engagement, here's how it's correlated directly, and here's the predictive piece of if we increase them these specific actions, they have these impacts on the things we really care about, right? And as soon as you get them, then they can get there. All right, Mary Beth.
So I'd say a quick trick to shorten runtime would just be to broaden up your horizons. So if you're looking at a specific Black Friday 2017 campaign, maybe open that audience up to banners for a quick win, rather than having a specific set of defined individuals or a specific target. You can still see directional results with a larger audience. And I second food. Pizza.
Bring the food and cookies. Don't forget the cookies. And if you happen to come to our office, we'll feed you whiskey. So or beer. All right. So we're going to pause there or stop there for this week. I hope you guys had a good time. I did. That was a lot of fun. Really great to see all of you that actually turned on your webcams, and everybody else. Maybe you'll get there. It takes time. It's fine if you don't. Next topic is actually going to be our advanced topic in 2 weeks on October 13. And the topic is journey analytics. So any of you who are on today who want to be a part of that panel, reach out to me, let me know. And I will tell you that we are going to have a guest expert. Gary Angel's going to join us. So I hope everybody can make it. If you haven't ever talked to Gary, he is like the smartest guy on earth, and he knows all about journey analytics and really everything analytics. So he will be on the call and you'll be able to ask questions of him. So be sure to make it. On top of that, Gary and I are doing a webinar the day before on October 12th on all things optimization online and offline. You should have received an invite from me. If you haven't, send me an email and I'll make sure you get it. And hope you all can make that as well. And then Mel and I and Lynn, and who else is on the call? That's Carrie, are you going to make it to DA Hub? We're all going to be there Monday or Sunday.
Yes, I'm going to be there Monday.
Awesome. Can't wait to see you. So some of us are going to be there. I hope anybody who happens to be in New Orleans Sunday through Thursday, stop by, come say hi. And if you come to the conference, we'd love to see you. Right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.